All right, let's dive into what might be the single biggest, most profound mystery there is: consciousness itself. We're not talking about what your brain does, but why it feels like something to be you. I mean, really think about that for a second. You've got this 3-pound lump of tissue inside your skull, right? It's a crazy complex network of about 86 billion neurons, all firing off little electrical signals. And yet somehow all of that wetware, all that biological machinery, creates this, your own private inner world. The feeling of being happy, the taste of your morning coffee, the raw experience of seeing the color blue. How on earth does that happen?
And look, this isn't just some casual question we're tossing around. It's got a name, coined by the philosopher David Chalmers: the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems are figuring out what the brain does, how it processes information, how it controls your body. The hard problem is, why does all that processing feel like something from the inside? Why is there an experience there at all?
So that massive gap between the physical stuff, the neurons, and the inner feeling, that's why it's called the hard problem. It's like we're trying to build a bridge between two completely different worlds, and so far, science just hasn't been able to span the gap.
You know, we can put someone in an fMRI scanner, show them a picture of a red apple, and we can literally watch their brain light up. We see the visual cortex fire, we see memory centers get involved, language areas. We can trace the whole physical chain of events. But the weird thing is, nowhere in that chain of firing neurons can we point and say, ah, there it is, the feeling of redness. It's just not there. There's this huge explanatory gap.
Now, of course, science is not just sitting on its hands here. Researchers are relentlessly trying to figure this out. And the main approach, the dominant assumption, has always been that consciousness has to somehow bubble up out of the brain's incredible complexity. And the scale of this complexity is, well, it's just mind-boggling. We said 86 billion neurons, but get this, those neurons are connected by as many as 500 trillion synapses. So the hope has always been that if we just keep digging into that massive, tangled network, eventually we'll find the secret. And this search has given us some really brilliant theories. You've got global workspace theory, which kind of says consciousness is like a spotlight on a stage. Whatever information is in the spotlight gets broadcast to the whole brain. Then there are others, like integrated information theory, that try to create a mathematical formula for consciousness. So there's a lot of active research. But here's the kicker. Even the most advanced of these theories are still just describing the mechanics that go along with being conscious. They're describing what the brain is doing when we feel something, but they still can't explain why it feels like anything to begin with. The hard problem is still standing. So, what if the entire starting assumption is just wrong? What if we've been looking at the whole problem completely backward? There's an ancient philosophical tradition from India called Vedanta that proposes exactly that, a total, radical reversal of how we see things. Okay, so check this out. Modern science, for the most part, says you start with matter. The physical universe, the brain, that's the fundamental stuff. And out of all that complexity, consciousness somehow emerges. Vedanta just flips that completely on its head. It says, no, you start with consciousness. That's the fundamental reality. Consciousness is the screen on which the entire physical world, our brains included, is projected. This incredible idea is captured in these ancient Sanskrit texts called the Upanishads. This one, Aham Brahmasmi, translates to I am Brahman. And the implication is just profound. It's saying that the individual consciousness you experience as I, it isn't some small temporary thing created by your brain. It is one and the same as the single universal ultimate reality of everything, Brahman.
Okay, so if consciousness isn't produced by the brain, what in the world is the brain's role in all this? And how does this ancient model explain our simple, everyday experience of, just seeing and hearing things?
Here's another one of those key phrases, tat tvam asi, which means that thou art. It's reinforcing the same mind-bending idea of unity. The very consciousness that is looking out through your eyes right now is the exact same consciousness that underlies the entire universe. It's not that we each have our own little separate consciousness. It's that we are the one consciousness, just experiencing itself from billions of different points of view. So how does this actually work when you see that red apple? Well, according to this model, your senses in your brain do their jobs. They gather all the data, the light waves, and they create a mental pattern, a little packet of information they call a vritti. But that pattern on its own is just dark, meaningless data. It takes consciousness, which they call chaitanya, to act like a light, to shine on that mental form, and poof, that's what turns it into the living, subjective experience of redness.
Here's a really simple way to think about it that makes it click. Imagine consciousness is the sun. It's just always there, everywhere, shining with its own light. Your brain then is like a window. It doesn't create the sunlight, it just lets the light shine through. A very simple organism, like a worm, might have a tiny, dirty little window letting just a glimmer of light in. A human brain, that's like a huge, crystal clear window, allowing for a brilliant, rich expression of that very same sunlight.
Okay, so let's put these two incredibly powerful and totally competing worldviews right next to each other, just to see the contrast as clearly as possible.
This slide really lays it all out, doesn't it? From the neuroscience perspective, the brain is a generator. It builds consciousness from the ground up, and the universe is just matter that eventually creates mind. But in the Vedantic view, the brain is more like an instrument or a receiver. Consciousness is the fundamental reality, and it's that consciousness that gives rise to the appearance of a material world. They're two completely opposite ways of looking at everything.
And, before you write this off as just some ancient mystical idea, what's really fascinating is that some corners of modern physics and philosophy are starting to circle back to very similar questions. You have ideas like panpsychism, which is the theory that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe itself, or the physicist John Archibald Wheeler's famous idea, it from bit, which basically suggests the physical world actually arises from information. They're all poking at the same strange boundary.
So we're left with this one absolutely profound question. Is that incredible organ inside your head a generator, working tirelessly to manufacture the light of your own awareness from scratch? Or is it more like a highly sophisticated antenna, tuning into a signal that is already and has always been everywhere? That's a thought to sit with for a while.